Good morning. This is Talking Devils, your favourite Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker. We're going to talk over another difficult week at Manchester United, which basically is my predefined intro for the podcast, and I've rarely needed to change it all season. Please like and subscribe if you're watching. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your questions in. We've already got one in this morning before we even went live. If you're watching the replay as well, hello. Do feel free to comment. We do reply. Before we start, Paul, criminal act from me last week. Forgot to wish you happy birthday as we were live on the podcast. So happy birthday for last week. Did you have a good day?
Yeah, it was a long day. I think made longer by the fact of keep remembering how old I am now. So that makes it even harder, really hard.
Yeah, a good week.
Yeah, not too bad to be honest, Wayne. Quite a bit of football, doing football games, and it's getting to the point now where I can't wait for the season to end.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that Paul doesn't mean that, so he can get the summer off talking to me. I think we're both a bit beleaguered with the idea of coming on here every Monday morning and having to talk about the same old things, really. So if you're watching this, obviously it's going live on Twitter as well as Facebook and YouTube as well. I'm having a few days off Twitter just to concentrate on sort of being positive and everything like that. I needed a break from it to recharge. A lot of people reaching out to be kind. Really appreciate that as always. A few people being snarky about, why tell everyone that you're having a break. A couple of reasons. The first is I do have some good friends on social media. They worry if I go quiet a little bit, so just reassuring them that I'm fine. To maybe a few years ago, like now, I decided to be upfront about my own mental health and anxiety on a more public front with that, and I just think it's better to be present and tell people like what's going on at that moment in time. And I think if you're open about it and you encourage people to be open as well, then if it does, consider it a good thing. And it's good to say, you know what, every now and again you need to step away from it. You need to sort of center yourself, centralize yourself, and remind yourself that you're doing positive things for positive reasons. You try to be the change that you want to see and all that sort of stuff. So you do need some time away. Sometimes you go through periods where you're just struggling and you need to talk to someone. I always encourage that. Sometimes you might just want to question, but you need time away because you're questioning your self-worth or path in life, and you need a few days to not let the world come in and invade that. So it's good to have that little break sometimes, just back away and remind you who you are. And then you watch Manchester United play, and they lose a game, and it feels like normalcy, consistency in the worst kind of way. A couple of comments, as I said already there, so I'll get to them straight away. Gary Cook says, "Morning, Wayne and Paul. Hope you're both well. Can you see where another win is coming from? Would you play the youngsters and drop the players who are leaving for free?" These are questions, obviously, we've talked on a weekly basis. And first of all, where another winning's coming from, I mean, we'll talk about that in due course as well, but it's a good question. Would you play the youngsters? Honestly, Paul, when he named the team on Saturday, I saw the reason for it. A lot of people are saying bring all the youngsters in now and give them whatever. I thought, Everton are in a relegation fight. It's away from home. Possibly not the best environment to bring these kids in, knowing that they're in a culture of a team that just aren't going to fight in these kind of games. So it's not a good environment to place those players in. You've mentioned that on previous podcasts as well. But the home games are a different matter, aren't they? Playing Norwich and Brentford at home, and you would think like 2 or 3 of these kids at least deserve a chance to play. I think Saturday showed one thing: the players who were leaving for free, the very obvious players who were leaving for free. You've got to start looking. There's no point playing them anymore, right? It's a great question from Gary. That's exactly nail on the head. You've got to stop playing them because it's doing nobody any good.
No, it's not. I mean, if the players had been showing a good attitude throughout, then you think to yourself, well, you want them on there, you want their experience, and you think to yourself, yes, they're going, or their contracts up, whatever they're going. Then you think to yourself, well, you might want that, but you'd say the players are in that situation. No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't really be playing. You have to be looking forward now especially the position that United are in. I certainly wouldn't have played any young players in that game against Everton. I worked the game, and I was asked a question about how did I think this one would go. I said after the week that Everton have had, and I was at West Ham last weekend. I saw them play midweek. I said this is the kind of game that United would mostly take a bit of pressure off of Everton by allowing them to get 3 points. I was proved right. A little bit was in my mind was thinking about that game, the 4-0.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, how embarrassing that was for Manchester United at that given time, and how again this has almost replicated it without as many goals. So it's a worry for me. But the youngsters coming in now, even when you talk about Norwich won at the weekend. So you think to yourself, they're not still counting themselves out. Is that? I think it's more pressure. You need to put the youngsters in a position where they're playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world in one of the poorest times ever, and put them under that pressure, knowing that it could be a major embarrassment. Doesn't matter if they're kids; people are just going to see it months, years down the road that Manchester United lost to maybe a Norwich at home who finished bottom of the Premier League. That's something that I don't think those young players deserve. The ones who got them in a mess, as the saying goes, from the good old days, should be the ones who try and get them out of the mess. But that was in the days when players played with a bit of pride. Not anymore. That adage is gone. The game against Brentford, it's a tough game. Brentford are with a manager. He's going to want to come to Old Trafford, and they've gone to Stamford Bridge and they've thrashed Chelsea. He's going to want to come to Old Trafford and make a name for himself and for Brentford by their first visit or their first time in the Premier League, first time, going to say top division, top division, and then go and win at Old Trafford in their first season back after how many God knows years. No, I don't really think you can put young players into that scenario with some of the players some of these players who are under contract, because I don't think they're going to get any help, and it could maybe hinder them to be tarred with the same brush as some of the players out there already. So I understand what people are saying about these players not being involved next season, but I don't think it's like turning around and say to young players, well, you've been let down by these pros, these ones playing in front of you. We're going to put you up on the stand now, and we're going to flog you. Because of them, you have to take their punishment. That's not fair.
No, right. We've got a great question from Ben as well about Ten Hag, but I'll come to that a little bit later because obviously that's where the conversation is going to take us. No, it's a great point, Paul, and you're absolutely right. And that was my fear, especially in the away games. But yeah, you made it a convincing argument for the home games as well. And you kind of think maybe at this point, because the players have exposed themselves for what they are, maybe it's fine to just let them see out the 3 or 4 games towards the end of the season. Let them achieve this failure, which is going to be on them. I know that the managers paid a price for it, but the players have got no hiding place now. So let them just achieve this obscurity and then be done with it. As difficult it is, as unpalatable as it is to watch, sometimes you look at things and people were doing it under Ollie and they were saying, "Oh, there's got to be deeper reasons for this. Why have we fallen back so bad?" But sometimes the answer to the question is obvious, and the players the commitment levels are just outrageously poor, and you could see that too pedestrian on Saturday. Let's talk about it then. Everton 1-0, another failure to respond to a setback. Everton weren't playing well. It wasn't like they were storming us. Like, they got a goal on the break and then they just settled for it, and they didn't have to play well to get the result. They didn't have to defend particularly well. United had nothing up front, and they didn't even Ragnick didn't even try and address that. In fact, he was taking off forwards and bringing on midfielders. They did. This is United's modus operandi for this season. They've failed to come back into games. When they've been let down early on with the goal, they just sort of plod through the rest of the game. What do you think of it? I mean, it's abysmal. You mentioned the 4-0, and you're right. At least that Everton side, they sense blood. They sense blood. and they got the blood and they tore us apart on that day. On Saturday, they didn't sense blood because they're a poor team. They were there for the taking. And then we just sort of like sat down and let them roll over us. I've never seen that. I mean, you again, to mention that 4-0, it was like that, but even worse because of the fact that it was a poor team that were playing against. You go to Goodison, you know that the crowd will be up for it. So you know that Everton are going to be up for it. But it wasn't like that on Saturday. It was like they were flat, we were flat, and we still let it happen to us. You know, Rangnick talks about the first 20 minutes that we're in control. Well, maybe we controlled it a little bit, but it wasn't like a dominant control of the game. And as soon as like they scored, you knew it was either going to finish 1-0 or more goals to them. You knew there was nothing there from United, and that is criminal, isn't it, Paul? It's absolutely a damning indictment of these players.
Yeah, I don't know that bit he just said there, Rangnick, saying the first 20 minutes, control. Cross them, I would have had more control of a wet fish than what they had control of that game, to be perfect honest. It's not a chance where they in control. It was two poor teams trying their best to make more than 3 passes. That's what that was. It was awful to watch the game first 20 minutes. But like I said earlier, I was at London Stadium watching Everton play against West Ham. West Ham's strength was playing at a tempo initially and getting the ball in behind them. Bowen kept getting in behind them. Antonio kept getting in behind them, even though Antonio couldn't finish a fish supper. But they was getting in behind them on the other side. Ben Rama getting in behind them. United never got behind them until Elanga come on, and he made one run with the ball behind him to get to the byline to pull it back, and the other one he made a run, like an Andrei Kanchelskis run, was an angled run with a straight pass to try and get him behind. Other than that, Rashford and Sancho never tried to run without the ball. Sancho will not run without the ball. Don't understand it, really, and I'm saying myself. 70 odd million and won't run without the ball. And he's got good pace. Still not done enough. So then you start looking in midfield and you think it's something to happen, and it wasn't. It was laboured. It was just there. And every time they got the ball, you're waiting for it. You think it's right, and it was predictable. Really, really predictable when it happened. When they got the ball, you knew what was going to happen because of the way they are set up with the players they've got. They haven't got a centre forward to play off. They haven't got a centre forward who's going to make a run in behind to see if the centre half wants to run in behind. They haven't got it. When you're up against one of the worst centre halves in the Premier League in Michael Keane, you've got to try and work him, and never once done it. Ben Godfrey, another one, a full-back centre half who's Burnley embarrassed them. West Ham flattered them with the scoreline, and West Ham weren't that good either on last Sunday. So Sunday before last, sorry. So they let themselves down again, and I just knew it was going to happen. I really knew it was going to happen. The other side of me, when I'd done my predictions, I knew they were going to struggle, but I still had Manchester United to win the game. But when it came to actually being asked direct, I had to say what I thought when I woke up that morning, and I'm travelling on a train, and I was kind of thinking to myself, do I really want to do this game? Because I think I know what's going to happen. Everton fans were going to want blood. They want to turn it into the atmosphere as it was against Man City. The thing about it is that they never really got going at Goodison, the fans. They never got going until that goal was scored, and they went, and then all of a sudden everything was back. It was a big party in the stadium, and it was like trying to really make it really a bad place to be. But after that, even then, they got nervous, the fans. They just believed that Everton were going to give a goal away because Everton don't keep clean sheets unless they play Manchester United.
Yeah. Harking back to that 4-0, Ollie said something like, I'll be here and be successful, and some of these players won't. 6 played yesterday, and I think someone said it was 9 or 12 who were still contracted in the squad as well. So it's fair to say that in his first summer, Ollie was pretty ruthless, but also an indication of how the ownership has hurt the club in terms of player turnover. I mean, the entire midfield three, Matic, Fred and Pogba, they all who played in that 4-0 all played yesterday, and we were as poor in midfield then as we were yesterday. And Pogba came on and seemed to be playing more for a red card than an equaliser, which was just, I mean, what do you say at this point? Just there's no point in carrying on with any of it. At United, a couple more comments coming in. 100% true. Paul looks like a City fan. I can assure you that he is not.
I didn't even realise that. I've just been to the gym this morning. This is my gym gear. I can only apologise for not having me thinking head on.
Definitely not a City fan, though, I'll tell you that. So, damn, did Wayne read all those books? All those ones? Yes, all those ones I wrote. So, yes, might go and hide and write some more, actually, on United's history. It's a better place to hide than the present and future. But we need to talk about the news that was coming out last week. So Ben asks, morning gents, I'm Wayne. Hearing that Ten Hag wants control over ingoings, outgoings, renewals. If so, can't see that being agreed, although it's reasonable. If they don't agree, it's a message to any other top-level hyped manager, go to United at your peril. It goes back to this thing about Ole, saying that 6 players played yesterday who said that it wouldn't play again, even though he's not in control of that. I think it's a turnover. I mean, this complete control thing, Paul, is something that's been made over the last few days. This point, it's an obvious one as well, one that's undermined various managers before. You would assume that any manager who takes over in any job is going to say, I want complete control over ingoings and outgoings. But I just think, like, now, I mean, first of all, I'll ask you that question as Ben's asked it. What do you think about that? I mean, the fact that he's sort of said, I want complete control, that should be like a no-brainer, right? I mean, regardless of the Glazers' track record or anything, any manager going into a job should be saying something like that.
If you're going to go down in flames, you'd rather have the match in your hand yourself, wouldn't you, rather than someone else holding it, to be perfectly honest, as a manager. And that's maybe one of the reasons why the game doesn't want to, or I should say, football doesn't want to have the person at the top being called a manager, because that means then it sounds like he's got control and they don't want to give him that control. Seems like they want now, because there's so much money, to have this sporting director for him to make certain decisions about things. But it does seem to work for certain clubs. I don't know if it works over here, but it definitely works in Europe. It certainly works with him and Van der Sar. But I think the trust between the football director, and the owners or chairman is a lot better than what it is with Manchester United and their owners, because their owners are looking at it completely different to how. So employing someone, so the people who they've got on their structure at the moment, on their little tree with Fletcher and whoever, they're just names really. They're people who have got mostly great ideas, but none of them actually get sanctioned, to be perfectly honest. It's just filling the criteria. This is what we're doing, but in theory, we're saying from over the pond, this is what we're going to do. And every signing, there could be some really good signings out there. Say, i.e., there's a really good centre half out there for 25 million, but there's a centre half over there who's worth 80 million, but we sign that one for 80 million. It's maybe just the same, but the other one might be slightly better. But this one's got a better commercial value because he represents England. So that's how we'll sign him. And then we look at it, and then we'll see and wait a while to see what people are doing with their thumbs or little fingers on phones in the weight, and what they're saying on pluses and minuses of players. And then we might go that way. So as a manager, when you look at a player, you see that he's a very good player, but you want to know what's he all about off the pitch. Yeah. You want to find out what has he been like in other dressing rooms at other clubs, what other players have said about him. So you have the right people to work with you who will go and find those things out. That's what you do. You don't go and buy them because they're a commercial. Commercially, they can sell shirts, they can do whatever. You go and buy them look at their personality, footballer, tick. Then you suddenly go character and personality. Are they going to fit into what you've got already? Manchester United haven't been doing that. They've got players in on what they are on paper, but they haven't looked about what they're like in real life. And in real life, some of these players have been bad people. They've been the wrong people, the wrong characters to fit in, and that's where it's wrong. So I'm going to really minimise it now. He's right, and he shouldn't come unless he has got 100%. If he wants somebody, he wants that player, and if that player is not going to sell the amount of shirts that the club wants, I'll tell you what, still go and get that player and play the longer game and say, but that player is going to take us towards winning a Premier League or a Champions League, or in theory at this moment in time for Manchester United to win a trophy. And then that's where the commercial value will get the value, because then it will be a team value rather than an individual. Because that's the problem that's missed at the moment. Manchester United have become a team, a club without really an FC on the end, but a club that is just involving individuals, all individuals with their own commercial value.
No, you're right. You mentioned this maybe even 2 years ago, going back to a comment you said, something like too many players at United who are more interested in the profile of playing for the club than what the reality of what it takes to play for them. And I think now United have traditionally always had that balance of like 7 or 8 workers and 3 or 4 stars. And now they've got 11 players, well, maybe 9 or 10 players who think that they're stars, and 1 or 2 workers. And one of them's in the net. So tells you everything that you need to know. You need to redress that balance, and you need not necessarily a pragmatic coach, but someone who identifies that. And the good thing about Ten Hag is that from the philosophy that Ajax have always had that philosophy of like 11 players working hard and moving around. The difference with Van Gaal is that he was so stoic with it. Those players had to be specialists in areas, and they had to stay in the certain areas, whereas Ten Hag might be a bit more modern in the fluidity of the movement, and if he can do that, then that's a big thing. But I do think that the complete control is an obvious point. But you mentioned it there. The point is that he's got to be backed to make those decisions, and we saw it with Mourinho. He didn't have the backing. It looked like he had the guts to end Pogba or Martial's career at United 4 years ago, and let's face it, that would have been about time, because the 4 years since have been no good for anyone. If Ten Hag is hired in good time, Paul, so obviously one of the big problems with Van Gaal is that when he first came in, a lot of these players, like a lot of the senior players, had already gone in the meantime. So Vidic, Ferdinand, Evra, Giggs, they'd all retired or left and gone to another club. So he wasn't making any major decisions in terms of outgoings. He couldn't, because they'd all gone. So he was bringing in new players to replace them, trying to install a new culture into the club. If Ten Hag is hired in good time, where Pogba's contract is still on the table, and Martial obviously got to make a decision on him, and Lingard or whatever, I know that Pogba's probably going to leave, and so is Mata, and so is probably Matic and Chong and Jones and a couple of other players like that. Can it still work that Ten Hag comes in and looks like he's in control of those outgoings, Lingard as well, or is it gone too far now? Has it gone too far because those players are going? You know what I'm trying to say? That if he comes in and sort of says, right, we're not even going to this contract that's been on the table for Pogba, take it off. We don't want it anymore. We're making a clean slate, and that would give him a little bit of a power in the dressing room. Do you think that that's achievable, or do you think that horse has bolted now?
I would say if he's going to come in, if he's going to want to make a big thing, I think that'd be one of the things that he has to do, and I would think that's one of the things he'd want to do. He'd want to do that. I think that might give him a bit of kudos to be able to make those decisions. Jesse Lingard, no different as well. The Jesse Lingard scenario is one of those ones you think to yourself, this could keep going as long as EastEnders has been on TV now, and it's wearing a bit thin.
Let me interrupt on that then. Do you think he can do it then? You think that if he came in, let's say he's hired before the end of May, that he can come in and sort of say, and it looks like it's his decision, rather than, like the pretty girl who you ask out and she says no and you weren't interested anyway, which is basically what's going to happen with these players. They're probably going to go, but do you think that it looks like he can have the power to look like he's made that decision? Do you think that that's achievable?
I believe so. It's the only way it can work. It's the only way it can work. Too many people know things about Manchester United, and the problem is they know it. They're getting it all from the wrong sources in that
Yeah.
sense. They don't want to hear it really from there, but they're having to grab it and then embellish bits, take bits away, because the people are not being transparent about the situation. There
No.
shouldn't be talk of a contract on the table for Pogba, and it's up to him if he signs it. What has he done to earn it? Jesse
Mm.
Lingard's situation, that should have been put to bed. He should have virtually been told, you're not going to play for the rest of the season. You can go. But story comes out that Rangnick has said that, that he's in his plans. He's going to get game time, after January. It's been nowhere near it. The opportunities to play him have been there, but
Yeah.
he's not played him, so he's not. So you can see that there's people who are controlling it. Jesse Lingard has got a big following on social media. That shouldn't be a
Yeah.
reason why he should be at a football club, to be perfectly honest. Not the way to run a highly successful business like Manchester United, really, when you're looking at it. The strength of Manchester United is what's on the pitch. And at the moment, it's very, very poor. So that will affect the top line upstairs, because commercially, they're losing that bit. United's strength is their history, but it's a strength they could lose. They're losing every minute of the day, because at the moment they're not creating any. They're not creating any history in being involved in stuff, being involved in semi-finals, finals, competing for a league. So put that where it's been. I'll go back to my 7, 8 years living in Southeast Asia, and the amount of Man United and Liverpool fans there,
Mm.
incredible. But it's amazing how many Leicester fans were there when they won the league, how many Chelsea fans there was there, how many Man City fans there are there now. And I always
Yeah.
say to people, you go over there and you look in the wardrobe, where before it was just it could have been two shirts in there, two different shirts. Now there's 4 or 5 different shirts there, because those clubs are being successful. And the last shirt at the end, just pushed in a dark bit of the wardrobe, is that Manchester United shirt, and that's
Yeah.
how things change. Asia's a big market. At the moment, Manchester United are disappearing. They're not being talked about as what they were before, because they're not successful. They are
Yeah.
not. They're not there, and it isn't all about winning. Competing makes a big difference as well, and they're not competing.
No, absolutely not. Patrick with some comments this morning. Good morning, Patrick. Hope you're doing well. He says, "Morning, guys. Slightly conflicted about Ten Hag and complete control reports. Previously, we've been criticised for not having overarching structure and philosophy independent of coaching. However, I'd probably trust Ten Hag's ideas over the people we have in charge at the moment. I think that's where we are. We've had this conversation so many months now that it's a case of getting the best out there and trusting that manager, even if it's not the obvious. Well, even if there's no one that's standing out and saying, pick me as Manchester United manager." He also says, apparently we entrusted full autonomy to Van Gaal, and the claim was he jettisoned too many players too quickly. I think that's fair. I mean, obviously, we just talked about the players that he lost, but then the second summer, it was like everyone like Hernandez and Raphael and Evans and all the sort of squad players, they were all gone, weren't they, as well? So massive loss of experience that we had at United around that time. It is interesting to see what's going to happen with this. Just a quick one to conclude on Ten Hag. Sorry, we've talked about this in the past, and you've talked about Pochettino being your choice. Now it looks like it's going to be Ten Hag. Do you think? Like I've just said there, I don't think that there are two obvious candidates to jump out, but those are the two that have been favourites since day one. Do you think it could be? Are you positive that it could be a good choice, even though you were sort of on the Pochettino fence?
Yeah, I mean, then Pochettino got it for me because he's been in the Premier League. He knows how to dig in and get things and improve players. That's the bit I liked about him. But he would be no different after the time he's having at PSG. I'm sure that he'd want to come back and work with players who he could improve the way he'd want to, the way he believes, rather than be given players at PSG. He wants to manage in that
Yeah.
way. Sir Alex was a fan of his as well. I just think there's something about him that says Manchester United. Ten Hag. Don't know enough about him, but I like the fact him or someone else is speaking up and saying what he wants to do. It's easy to come out and say, "I want to manage Manchester United." And I think those days are gone now. Who's going to manage a club doesn't want to suddenly be living in the world of being berated and being scrutinised week in, week out. You'll accept United. You're always going to be scrutinised managing a club like Manchester United, but you want to be scrutinised in the right way rather than a negative way. And whoever takes that job on at this moment in time, and if they were to go in the same way that everyone else has, they're just going through the motions. And it doesn't matter how big the name is, it's going to be the same problem. So you're better off getting someone in who's proved himself at a club that wants to improve young players, bring them into a successful team, go out and at young ages at young age play in sides that win championship, be it that it is, you know, Dutch, it is in Holland, but still, still you're playing for Ajax, a big club, a highly successful club, and renowned all over the world, Ajax, and you bring them into that culture. So he knows how to be around it and to introduce players. So given that opportunity, allow Manchester United to maybe slightly deviate a little bit with someone who has worked in a system and producing young players like Manchester United did. Or, yeah, the word did. It is a did. They haven't for a long while, and there's players there who might need a chance. But those players are only going to improve if they've got a successful team to go into where every pro in there is playing in the right manner with the right attitude. It was going to help them. If Ryan Giggs, if you could introduce a Ryan Giggs into playing with this lot here at this moment in time, Ryan Giggs would not have been a Ryan Giggs. Because you improve with you always improve with good players around you. It's as simple as that. That's what happens. That's what takes you forward. That's the bonus of football being a team game. It's impossible to do it on your own, and you need people to talk to you, to help you as a young player, and that isn't there at the moment, Wayne. So if he does come in, then he's going to come in and he's going to want his way of doing it, and it can only be for the good of the club, really. As good as the club, you can't just go out now. If you was to suddenly throw £1 billion at any manager to come in now and say you've got £1 billion over 2 windows to make us a Premier League champions or Champions League, you'll turn it. It's not going to happen. It's impossible to be that way. It isn't just about throwing money at it like that way, because we've seen teams who are doing it. We've seen City. You look at Liverpool and what they've done. Everyone talks about how much they've spent, but it didn't happen over a season or 2 seasons. To get the consistency of competing at the top all the time, as Sir Alex done over his tenure, then it takes time. And once you build within. That was taken away from Sir Alex, that building while he was with a successful team. And that's where Manchester United lost that way. That's when the cycle stopped. It was slowing down and slowing down. 2013 was someone threw a stick in a spoke.
Yep, no, absolutely. And history tells us that. Ben says if you're making a meal, you don't want others lobbing random ingredients into the mix and you don't know what they are. Yeah, that's definitely what's happened at United. Norwich, you mentioned a little bit about it earlier, Paul. They were without a league win since January, and obviously they got one against Burnley at the weekend, which at least takes that off our back. But at the same time, now they're probably coming into Old Trafford thinking this is a team on the down if you're up for it, and that seems to be the only thing that teams require these days is to be up for it and positive against us. Then we're going to be there for the taking. The thing that counts against this Norwich team is the fact that they are so low in quality that you would expect United to still have enough to see it through. But we've been there before, said this many times, and United, if there's one thing they've been successful at, is finding new ways to disappoint us this season, and it seems like that heading into this game, doesn't it? Not without wanting to be too pessimistic, it seems like all the ingredients are there for you wouldn't be surprised if Norwich get a result, basically.
I remember the game at Carrow Road, and they gave United a right scare at Carrow Road, by the way, and they're a little bit unfortunate the way things ended up, the way they played. So they're going to come there. They've got, as the saying goes, Dean Smith will be talking about it. leading up to it, and he'll be virtually using the words, or not unless he comes out and actually says it, we've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's expecting us to go down. We're going to Old Trafford, but he's going to Old Trafford knowing that if he can get his team, if you go away, the idea you go away from home is to silence the fans, and that means to maybe get the first goal at best, get the first corner, turn them around, get them behind them, get the fans on someone's back, isolate somebody, cause them a problem. All that will be coming out. The cliches will be coming out in the dressing room before the game. What Dean Smith will be saying, you know, it can be you can make your job easy in the first 10 minutes by doing this and doing that. So, and if they were to come to Old Trafford and get 3 points, I mean, I'm sure they've sold out all their away tickets over that weekend. There'll be so many people from Norfolk around Manchester over the long weekend just for the game. You know, they would have done it, because what the game is, it's virtually the one that makes or breaks them. So they've got nothing to lose. They're gonna enjoy it. And given how United played at the weekend, and I'm trying to think of a player who could go and just make a difference to get everyone else going. There isn't one. There isn't one, Wayne. And you can try your best. You can name people. People want to talk about Fernandez, and I'm going, no, he's going to get no one going. People will say, oh, Scott McTominay might be fit. You know, pumping the badge hasn't taken 3 points anywhere, to be perfectly honest, pumping the badge. So you're looking for players to have a presence just on the park and with the ball at their feet. And if you're looking for a player to drag them along, and that player, you know, left Manchester United in 93, and that was Brian Robson. Someone like that who dragged people along, you know, and then all of a sudden they made it all that happen within the club. Someone in there goes, I want to be like them. I want to be like Roy Keane. I want to be like him. At the moment, anybody in there now coming through saying, words they'll say, I don't want to be like any of these. That's what they would say. There's no one to look up to at this moment in time, because you don't know what you're going to get. So it's unbelievable that we're talking about, you know, are United going to take 3 points from Norwich City? The last time that came up was 92-93 season, when Norwich were a decent team.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I remember the game the following season at Old Trafford, we drew 2-2, but that was a great game of football. That I always remember the game at Carrow Road, which was basically the game that made, I don't want to say made you as a team, but it kind of did, didn't it? The three goals in the first 20 minutes or something, where the counter-attacking and everything, it was just, I think that was the first moment where everything sort of clicked with Cantona and Kanchelskis and Giggs, and just went, wow, this could be one of our best teams. And obviously for the next sort of 2 years it was.
You got to remember as well. You got to remember as now, Wayne, that's been put to bed now, because we're non-existent now, because it's all about now. The greatest teams are now.
Well, yeah, and they're certainly not. I mean, it's funny because we were having that conversation last week. Is this the worst post-War United team? And I've seen a lot of people having that conversation over the week, and people saying, "Oh, well, it's as bad as since the 70s." And I'm like, just have a look at the 70s. Just have a look at the 70s, and you'll realise that's a massive insult to them, because at least they were fighting. They were fighting, and they knew how to play football. You know, they had if you watch their football, it's with flair. It was one touch. They were trying imaginative things and things like that. And this team they have no understanding of what it takes to. I don't feel that they've got an understanding.
The thing about it as well, man, we've got to remember, and we're talking about it now, because we are living in this now world, by the way, and we have to remember, and I've said it 1,000 times, and you have, the football before 92 was no different than what we're saying about now. It's still 11 players. The improvements of pitches, the balls are lighter. They say the players are fitter. I would say they're agility-wise. Every player's going on now nearer that Premier League level I'm about, nearer to being 100% than what we were, because we had smaller squads, but we had backbone. And when we talk about United when they got relegated, every game he was competing.
Yeah.
And every single the team that finished at the bottom of the league, yes, they might not be the best in the league, but they competed against everybody. They didn't decide, oh, we're not going to win that game and we're going to make changes and do this because our next game's winnable. That squad
Yeah.
of 14 players fought in every game. So every game was a battle. So that team that got relegated at Manchester United competed, and every player had to give it because they lived their life in Manchester, working class city, and they knew if they didn't give it, they'll be told on the street. But then as well, they had teammates who'd do exactly the same to them if they weren't
Yeah.
giving it, who weren't given 100% to fight for the cause. And that's why when you look at it today, it's a different way. The gaps between bottom and top now is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And we can talk about this, but the difference is monetary,
Yeah.
squad size, and the quality. And that's why football now people talk about it, but you can't compare it to the football before. You should not compare it in that way because it was a different mentality. It was different kind of footballers in that given time. We were people who believed our life was about football. That was it. And most of us suddenly went into it and we thought we was going to be doing it for the whole of our lives. And we was born into it. It was a working class game now. I call football a middle class game now. It's
Yeah.
played by
No,
the
yeah.
middle class. It's taken away from the working class, and that's why we are not seeing those characters, those men before. We're not. There's no Roy Keanes, there's no Brian Robsons being produced anymore. Players of that ilk who are in that manner, because the players coming out now are virtually guided into a system now of football.
Yeah. Ben says they're so poor now. That's a hard story to sell, and to the glories of the past that's becoming more distant, so it becomes hard to monetize. They don't seem to get it. Well, if any club is good at monetizing past glory, it's going to be United, isn't it? Patrick also makes a really good question to conclude the podcast with, Paul. Wayne, Paul, please indulge me. Which 3 players of the current squad would you keep? I need some make believe to cheer me up, stay sane. And I'll start because I don't. I want to answer the question a different way because it's basically which 3 players of the current squad would you keep? I don't think any of these players. Hang on, let me make sure I don't think any of this first team squad will be part of a United team that wins a title. That's my opinion. As for which I would keep. I don't want to be throwing because I still support them when they're on the pitch. Like the ones that I'm faithful about putting in a shift for the shirt. I mean, I really don't know. I've criticised Lindelof so much, but I think he's one who actually fights for the cause. De Gea, another bit again. With still. And Sancho maybe because he's still young and I still see there's something in him. And I just look at those 3 players and I think maybe those 3, but I'm still not convinced that any of them. Maybe Sancho, but you'd have to get the other 10 right, who will be part of our next title winning side. Giving you 30 or 40 seconds there, Paul, to come up with your own answers. So can you come up with 3 players who you would keep?
I'm going to go with 2 of yours in the goalkeeper and Lindelof because you know what you're going to get from him. I'm going to go with a player, and everyone, I really, I don't know what Patrick's going to think about this one, but I'm only because of what he's taken personally from everybody. Everyone's got an opinion about him. He's been judged off the back of another player, which everyone's raved about, but a few things have been said about him now because of his performances. I'll take Wan-Bissaka because he hasn't gone missing. Every time he's come out and played, he's given everything. He hasn't sulked. He hasn't gone whinging to the paper, moaning about things, dropping little hints at things he's unhappy. He's a lad who's come out of London, come up to Manchester, been in a very, very difficult period. I thought he did well at Everton. He always was getting on the ball, and everyone talks about him. No one ever talks enough about his strength. And there was a certain fullback yesterday for a team, and everyone wants to talk about his assists, but they talked about his defending, and his defending was woeful yesterday by all accounts. Woeful, his positioning. I've seen one of the goals, position awful, but all they do is they put another spin on it. Wan-Bissaka, they put a negative spin on it for him. But the thing about him, he has not gone missing, Wayne. Every time he comes out, he still tries to get on the ball. He still does all the good things. There's still a chance for him. Still a chance
Yeah.
for him to become a good fullback. I'm not saying it's going to be at Man United, but if you're going to keep Free, you'd keep him because he still wants to learn. You can trust him to still roll his sleeves up for you, which is a rarity at the moment for the club.
Yeah. Maybe being a bit unfair to Fred as well, because I know we've both been a fan of his recent form. I just look at it at the bigger picture and thinking, are any of these able to play in a team that's going to win a title? And I just think they're miles away from it. And I'm not even at that point. I'm not even being critical, because you're looking like Ronaldo. Yeah, of course, Ronaldo's top class, but first of all, you're going to need the work around him, and you're going to need basically another 10 players anyway, in a complete shift of
Wayne,
action.
we have to say as well, Ronaldo was top class.
Yeah.
No doubt in that at all.
Yeah. He's definitely. I mean, the recent performances have shown that. I just think if you get the service into him, but then you've got to be a specific team who's doing that and looking for him. And you could argue that any team is looking for a striker, but we can see that something's not right there. And it's a very difficult question, but a great question to ask. Thanks, Patrick, for that. And he says, "Enjoy today's usual. Have a good week." And we got a comment on your point there, Paul, from about Wan-Bissaka. He puts up working professionally every game. His technique just makes everything that he does look awkward, and people give him stick for it. Yeah, absolutely. But he did a decent job on Saturday, and he didn't go missing, and he did come in, and and I mean that is. When you're looking at this team and you're looking for straws to clutch, that's probably the biggest one that you can. At least didn't go missing, and that's more than you can say for many other players. Well, it's been a tough one to get through this week for sure. We will be trying hopefully have some positives to think of next week against Norwich. Well, hope everyone has a great Easter. We'll be back to talk about it. Whatever happens, if you've enjoyed the podcast, even with the depressing analysis of it and the realistic way that we've had to look at it, please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on the audio podcast, please give us a review and subscribe on the platform you're listening on. We'll be back next week. Until then, stay safe. Thanks for watching.